Question of the day. What is your favorite theme in board gaming? Now, today we're talking about one of my favorite themes, which is railroads, train games. Yes, I'm wearing my C.S. Lewis shirt. Some of you saw this on the cruise. Big fan. Love me some Lewis. But today we're talking about a set of games that I'm looking at three different types that really expand three completely different types of games, but they're all themed by trains, because in a few weeks I'm going to review quite a few more train games. So I'm going to give you three different genres of gaming that all tie together with the train theme, so that you can kind of see what games are out there if you also like this theme, or maybe you've not been interested in the theme before because you thought, well, I don't know anybody who works on a train. I don't either. I've never worked on a train. I've only ridden a couple, and most of them have been underground in London and New York, and going to and from airport terminals in Orlando, maybe? Anyway, point being is we're taking a look at three different games today, all three different styles of gaming, different weights of gaming, different length of games, but they all tie together by that theme. So we're taking a look at Railroad Revolution, we're taking a look at Railroad Rivals, and then we're also looking at 18 Chesapeake and some of the 18XX games, because those, to me, really give a broad scope of what train gaming can be. Now, there's tons of others like Whistle Stop. There's one sitting on my table right now that is Pacific Rails Inc., and then also Russian Railroads, Ultimate Railroads, German Rails, American Railroads. All those are sitting on my table right now. Going to be reviewing that pretty soon. But let's take a look at these three different games, how they play, what they do, and if these games are right for you, and why I recommend these three train games. So what does it take to be a railroad rival in this fast-paced tycoon game? Stock? Let's just see. Well, that kind of gives you the hint right there that it's not so much about building links. Comes a little expansion in my version here. I'm not saying my version is better. I'm just saying I don't know what this is exactly. Score track right here. Also the stock value track. I love this because it's variable and it's just an easy way to keep track of things. Here are all the character tiles. I love this. They're all named after people who either play tested or family members and friends and stuff like that. So it's really cute art there, but it's also men and women. So red is either Cornelius Provenzali or Eleanor Boucher. I'm going to say that's how you say it because I like Cajun words. Elias Mounsey or Annie Stagg. So cool, it's neat that those are all options there. You have your colors of your railroad people. You've got your blue, yellow, red, and black trains. Carla was very disappointed that there were no green trains in this. She was very, very upset because green, obviously, as we know, wins games, but it wasn't there. So, maybe an expansion. You have your nice printed bag with your goods cubes. I'm not even going to show you the inside of this because it doesn't matter. The colors don't represent gold, wood, or coal or anything like that. The colors only matter because the first person who delivers one gets 3 points. The second person who delivers that color gets 2, and then so on less. So the only reason there's multiple colors is because you have potential to gain more points each round. All of the stock tokens, these are all the different share stock companies, railroad companies that you can buy stock in, and the art on these is fantastic. I don't know if they're based on reality or not, but man, they look good. Regardless, if they're based on reality, well then good job, historical American railroad companies, for your excellent handwritten art. If they're not, well then excellent job, Railroad Rivals, for making some fantastic looking lithograph hand lettering art. But anyway, over here you have your stock tiles. Here, there's those same images, just a little bit bigger, and I love the way these look, right? Let's just look at a few more of these real quick. So there's the C&O Railroad, there's the S&P Southern Pacific Lines, there's the SR Southern Railway, and then NYC Railroad, and they look like stock certificates, even with signatures and all sort of that, but they're all different, by the way. This one doesn't look like the same, like this one, with just a different logo. They're actually all different. Excellent art. I love what would be considered boring art, quote unquote, stock certificates, to look unique. I don't like them to say the word stock. Company 1, company 2. I love when stock, shares, anything looks different. Even the borders, look at this. The borders look different on the outside. So just the little attention to detail is what really makes a game like this pretty. Notice the thick, chunky cardboard pieces there. So these are stock tiles. These are city tiles. You're going to put one starter city out there. There's Mobile right there. Somebody tell me what that city building is, because I'm not entirely sure. Buffalo, El Paso, Houston, Kansas City. There's one city in here that I had never, Pocatello. I'd never even heard of Pocatello. You know, and we travel all over the country, across the world, but never even heard of it. So what'll happen is you'll have a starter city, which would be like Cincinnati or somewhere in the Midwest, Chicago, Cincinnati, and I think St. Louis. You pick one of them to be the starter city, and you put it out. Let's just use Memphis for now because I'm not. No, you know what? We'll do it right. We'll use St. Louis. So this is your starter city. Well, what you do is you start with 2 city tiles in your hand. So let's just say I have Los Angeles and Shreveport. No, they don't touch. No, they're not anywhere near each other. But for the sake of this game, let's pretend it's abstracted and not directly adjacent. But let's just pretend that when something's adjacent, it means that there's a link between them rail-wise. Anyway, St. Louis goes out here. You'll notice there are 2 all around the pips here. You'll go into the goods cubes. You'll put 2 random goods on this city. Those are goods that can be delivered across these different railroad lines. You'll notice on the city tile that there are different railroad companies listed. So NYC, MP, B&O, and then the IC Railroad. On your turn, and we'll come back to this one more phase that happens first. We'll come back in a minute. But on your turn, you're going to take one of the tiles that you have, and you'll have up to 4 in your hand at a time. You'll take one of the 4 tiles that you have, and you'll look at it, and you'll try to make a link based on the railroads that are listed on the outside. So what's down here is NYC, MP, IC, and B&O. So you have to have one of those to make a link. Well, we have NYC right here in Boston. So you would put this out here. You would then go in the goods cube bag and put, again, fill it for its pips here on this new one. You then, on your turn, after everyone goes, they'll do the same thing. They'll all kind of add tiles out here potentially. This may or may not happen. You'll also mark it with a link. You'll put one of your railroads engines across this to show that you have a link across there. Now notice that, let's see if I can find one really quick that will work for our example here. Oh gosh, this could take a second. Here we go. PRR's here, PRR's here. C&O's here, B&O's here. You can do this because those 2 match. You will have a link across here. You will not have a link across here. Now, if you did happen to do this tile instead, wow, that worked out perfect, you would have 2 links. You'd have here and here. And the reason links matter is because you can then move a cube after everyone's gone. You'll move a cube from one city to another city across that single link. When you do that, whichever railroad you use to move that cube, that railroad will go up in value on the share board over there. So in our case, it would be the B&O Railroad. You would take the B&O token and you would move it up to 1 on the stock value. At the end of the game, you're going to multiply your shares in a company by the value on the board. So let's just say that the Southern, or here's a good example because we have 2 of them. Let's say that the C&O Railroad is at 7 points each. That means that this is now worth 14 points for your 2 shares in the C&O Railroad. Now, I believe there's 12 different companies, so there's a chance for you to get quite a few points if you diversify your funds enough. On the phase that happens before that I mentioned is there's a drafting phase. Everyone will bid for turn order. You can also keep bidding down for turn order all the way 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or you can just have the turn order be whoever bids first moves to the top and everything else shifts down relatively. So it's either or. There's really no right or wrong way. The variant is listed in there to use. You'll then draw city tiles equal to the number of players in the game and stock tiles equal to the number of players. So if you're playing a 4-player game, you'll draw 4 city tiles and 4 stock tiles. You then will draft for all those 8 tiles. You cannot get 2 city tiles or 2 stock tiles. You're going to have to get either a city or a stock tile. So it kind of limits you on how you can manipulate those prices, because that's the whole point of this game, is to manipulate the prices on the stock board to make those different shares in the company worth more. So you might not be able to make a great connection during the city phase, during the city tile laying phase, but when you make that link, let's just say you moved across the B&O Railroad again, well then you're moving that up again. So the goal is to get the value of your stocks to be worth the most, not just scoring links. You know, you do score points by delivering goods, but the point is to get your shares in your railroads to be worth the most points by the end of the game.
Railroad Revolution. Here you have the different city tiles out there. Now, there's not as many cities as you would see in a Ticket to Ride or something. You've got Miami, Houston, El Paso, San Diego, San Francisco, Salt Lake, Denver, Chicago, Little Rock, Charlotte, Washington, Boston, Duluth, Bismarck, and Seattle. And that's it. But that's not what the game is about. You could sell this to your friends as like, this is a grown-up Ticket to Ride, even though that's kind of pejorative to even say that Ticket to Ride's not grown up, but you know what I mean by that. It's a Ticket to Ride theme that has a ton of excellent mechanics, very, very mature mechanics and very different mechanics and things like that. So this is the board state. What you'll do is you'll notice that these two are printed on the board. These are not. These say 2 on the back here. Obviously, these are 3s, 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 4s, 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 5s, 5s, 5s. What does that mean? Well, we'll talk about it in a minute. Down here, you have the Western Union track, because not only is this game about doing railroads, it's about doing the telegraph. You will notice down here on the Western Union track, there are some interesting things about this too. These are also variable. Where you put these tiles, these create bonuses. I'll kind of go through what these bonuses do in a minute. There's also shares down here. When you place a station, which are these up here, you will put it out here on the board in one of these Western Union spaces. You will take the shares as its action. These also have the, now this mechanic I was also using Great Western Trail. These are these in-between victory points. So this is 5, 5, 8. To get this victory point, there is no space here. You notice that you have to have a station or an office, telegraph office, in these 2 spaces. You get what's in between it. I like that. I think that's a really cool way to incentivize building multiple of those. And I'll tell you why this is a good strategy in just a little bit. Over here is one of those great sliding scales for points at the end of the game. So in-game scoring happens up here with a notepad. You'll see the little notepad over there. But in-game scoring has a lot to do with this track, and this is kind of a a points per location track, Terra Mystica style with the cults, right? So the further you move up on this, you get that many points, whatever region you're in, for every Western Union station you put out. So the highest you can get, by the way, is 9 times. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It might be 72 plus the bonus points in between the middle. It comes up to a huge amount of points. I think it's like 116 or 119. It's a whole lot of points. So you increase this by this action. Anytime you see this action, you increase any of these as far as you want. You'll notice some of them have costs to move up past, though. Things like this, this, and this. I'll explain what those do in a little bit. Same here. This one is just for actual stations on cities, though. Same thing, you move up the track. Last but not least is, this is important to note. It is the network, your network, which would be trains that you're connected to. So these little pieces of train that you would put out in between cities here, these are the actual spaces, by the way. These, not these, but the ones with squares on them. You'll put your network out, and you'll connect it and expand it out here to the West Coast. You'll see there are 3 level 5 cities. These 3 level 5 cities, where you are on the track, gives you victory points for being connected to those and having them part of your network. For instance, when you're all the way up here, that's a 75-point bonus if you get that, if you're all the way up there. These symbols mean you have to pay a worker, as in get rid of a worker out of your supply. So a little bit of a trade-off. Think maybe that sounds horrible. We'll talk about that, why that's more common than you think. Over here is everyone's individual player board, and this kind of has a track up here at the top for each of your rails that you have left, and your stations, whether Western Union or railroad stations, up there at the top. Also interesting to note, each company color, basically player color, has their own unique symbol, name. Very cool. Just a nice touch they didn't have to do. Always like it when art goes the extra mile. Over here, your 4 actions, I'll zoom in close to explain that, but I want to show you up here at the top of these is a cost. This is not how much these cost to use. This is how much, when you take the sell action, they are worth. So you always have to go left to right. So you can't just, sell off this one over here. Once you sell all the way off, or place all the way off, I should say, to where all of this is clear on this side of your company name, that's what triggers the end game. It finishes out to where everyone gets the same amount of turns, and then everyone gets 1 more turn. So if the next to last person, which is what happened when we played, signals the end, the last person will get a turn, and then everyone will get 1 last round, which means you could actually use these, but the game is triggered ending here on this side. Let's take a look at what these actions do, and I'll get into this super unique mechanic about this game that is great, and you're gonna love it, I promise. So the 4 actions that you can do would be placing a railroad station, which would be kind of what we talked about, where you put it up onto one of the city tiles out here and just put it out. So if you did that, you would take this and you would pay the cost listed above the city tile. This is for 250. It has to be in your network. So the first turn, you could only place it in either Charlotte or Washington. When you place one of these stations, the first person to put gets this bonus here on this side, which would be 2 shares, and I'll explain what those do in a minute. You also get one of these 2 colored workers. You say, what do the different colored workers do? I thought that was player colors. Oh no, it's not player colors. You then So this cost is 500 up here. You get those. First player to get it gets it. Obviously, when the first player puts their thing here, no one else can get this first player marker unless they use a gray meeple. What does that mean? We'll talk about it in a minute. That is the first action. Second action is laying tile. This one's a little tricky. You pay $400 to put 2 of your railroad tracks out there, plus $100 for every one of these triangles you pass. These triangles represent difficult terrain, Smoky Mountains, swamps in Louisiana, the Atchafalaya Basin and all that stuff. I don't know if that's actually what it is, but I know that's where that is on the map. So that's what that is. It represents extra terrain that you would have to pay to kind of get your track across. So for instance, if you wanted to extend your network, these are actually just for the tile cards that everyone gets for your objective cards. And I'll explain that in a minute. So here, to go from Washington to Chicago would be the $400 base cost plus 100 and 100 for each of the triangles shown. So $600 to stretch across here. You say that's expensive. You only start with $600 in your bank. That is correct. It is expensive, but we'll talk about how you can mitigate that. Next action is placing a Western Union telegraph station. Take one of your things off the board here and put it in one of the tiles we talked about here. You can do it in any order. There is no network for these bottom pieces. If you place it here, for instance, this one gives you 1 additional share plus the 3 you normally get. You can also trash one of your workers to get $600. That's one way you can do it. And again, if you take the action again next turn and place here, you'll get that at the end of the game. So, last but not least is the action here of trade. Basically, you can get the amount listed above each of these individual things when you sell one of them right here. You can also flip a train. Everyone starts with this base train. It's worth 8 points if it's on this side. If it's on this side, it's worth no points, but you use it by flipping it. Wow, that was annoying. You flip it over to use it. So to flip this train, it allows you to upgrade or promote 2 of your workers. We'll talk about what that does in a minute. There are other trains, however, that you can get via this symbol here. It's kind of this diagonal shaped train, gets you a new train. There's other places on the board for it too. When you flip this train, you can place a tile for free, ignoring all terrain and the cost. When you flip this one, $600, you get 3 shares. Move up on the track 3 spaces, great action. And those are the different trains you can do. You can have more than one of each kind of train. These are the starter trains, so you only ever get one of those. And that's the 4 actions right there. Now, you say, what is all this under it? That is where the mechanics get really fun. We'll talk about what that does right in just a few minutes. Ah, meeples. Don't you just love the different colored workers? They got their little engineer hats and stuff. This is great. 4 different colored meeples. But wait a minute, I'm the blue team. Why would I have an orange meeple? That's precisely right. You have different colored meeples for a very important mechanic, and that is this. Notice at the bottom of the board, it shows different colored meeples, right? So when you regularly take the action, you would just do the top action. Second action down here, if you have a white one, lets you pull this off to promote one, and we'll talk about what that does in a minute. But if you do the action with these special colored meeples down here, they do different things. For instance, you can place a station for free. You can flip a train for $100 if you use the purple one. The orange one is the free one. Gray lets you take the first bonus as if you're the first one there, even if you're not the first one there. And if you are the first one there, it lets you take it twice. Blue lets you get, for 300 points, you can take the $300, you can take the action again twice.
This is 18 Chesapeake all set up. Now you instantly notice a markedly different appearance than 1830 that I reviewed not too long ago. Mostly in the fact that there's nice fonts everywhere. You have the different tokens that are, actual nice wooden tokens with stickers with each of the colorful train companies' logos on them. You also have the nice board, which got a little bit of different color. There's actual color coordination with the top board versus the bottom, where it's not just plain white, as well as just the nice look of the cards, the full color cards and everything like that as well. The trains have great art on them for the 1s, 2s, or the 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s trains. The basic way of playing is the exact same as any 18xx game. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to give you a quick overview. You can watch my 1830 video or some of the stuff that Ambi does on 18xx games here on the Dice Tower. But first, you're going to auction off these private companies. These are just little perks that you're going to get to use. They'll provide you income, but they're also going to give you a little bit of a bonus. You will auction those off first, then you'll have a normal auction round, which is where you auction the shares off to these railroad companies. Now in an 18xx game, you're not playing as a railroad company, you're playing as a railroad baron, a la like a Mr. Durant, investing in different companies, and you will control the company that you are the prime shareholder or the president of. The way you do that is you'll buy shares. The first share has to go 20% of the company, which is why it's got 2 shares on the first one here. You'll then set what's called the par value. This would be 70, 80, or 95. One of the things I really like about Chesapeake is they've simplified all the math. They're all zeros or fives. That is a fantastic thing when you're trying to get people into the game. You're not having to do, I think it's 74 times 2, well, it's 60 times 2, or 65 times 2, or 70, 80, 95 times 2. The math on that is just so much easier to quickly do in your head. It speeds the game up, which is nice. So you'll set the value. Say that you want to make B&O, the par value, at $70. You'll take the little B&O thing, put this here, and then this is sitting at $70. Now, that means that if anybody wants to buy a share of B&O from this area here, the public option, you can buy it here at $70 always. However, if someone has sold the share later for a different value based on the way that the stock market will move, you can buy it from the bank pool at whatever it is on the market. That might be higher or it might be lower than the par value. But if something's available here, you can always buy it for the par value. Once everybody's bought and sold enough of these stocks, you then move into the operations round. Now, for a company to activate, to operate, it has to have 60% of its company floated, or 60% of its company owned in shares. And the way that works is, once a company has 60%, it's then what's called floated. The person who has the most shares will take the player board for that railroad. They will then give a full 100% of capital to this company based on the par value times 100, or times 10. So if Camden and Amboy's par value is set at 70, it will get $700 here of company money to work with. Now, this company money is not your private money, which the private money is what you're trying to win with. But then you then make all the decisions for the Camden and Amboy. The home station will go out. It goes right here. So you immediately have access to some pretty nice little areas when you're running trains to get money. What's going to happen is you'll then operate. Now, what I love about this is it's got a nice player aid here. This tells you what the trains cost, what will rust, which means make these lower trains go away, as well as when they become available and what they do and change the phases of the game, as well as changing the color of tiles that are available. You can buy one of your private companies into the major company. You can lay a track tile. Now, first you can only lay yellow tiles, and these are pretty simple. The ones with the dots are cities or towns. The ones that are flat here, they're just pieces to move. The only thing is you have to keep the integrity of the board, so you can't completely just destroy a space. It has to match what you put over it. And there's actually a little chart that tells you what can go where. Once that's done, you'll then place one of your station markers if you choose to, because when you're running trains, an important thing to note, you can't run through someone else's station marker. You can start at it, you can end at it, but you can't run all the way through it. You can also run your train. So if you had a train out here, you would be able to run, which means you trace a line based on the level of the train. So a 2 train can move 2 cities, 1, 2, and collect the money listed on that tile. So this would be $30 if you ran it into Philadelphia. Pretty simple, but that number will go up from there. You can then either choose to keep all that money in the railroad's cash, which will decrease the stock value, or you can pay dividends out to whomever owns shares, which is that amount that was earned divided by 10 per share. Then you can buy your train. So the first turn you actually operate, you won't be running because you don't own a train yet, because that comes at the end of the phase. Trains are $80 for a 2 train. Once those are all sold, you can buy 3 trains. When that happens, the game will shift into the mode where you can start using green tiles to upgrade tracks that are out here. The reason upgrading and placing is important is because some of these are limited. Now, that is the majority of how the game plays. You're going to move into these different phases. They're going to give you more operations rounds versus stock rounds. You're going to keep buying shares, selling shares, running trains, building up personal capital to where at the end of the game, once that bank of 8,000, which is a much, much lower bank than normal, or than 1830, once that bank is broken, the person at the end with the most personal money wins the game.
So that's it. Those are the 3 games right there. I gave you a little bit of an overview of how to play these games and what they do and what makes them tick. But let's talk first of all Railroad Rivals. Now this is the lightest of the genre. This plays really quick and it takes a lot of the elements from things like Steam and Railways of the World and it condenses them down to where yes, you're delivering cubes and you're moving up the track when you get money for cubes and points for cubes. But instead of, worrying about building track, you're just laying out those different stations. And Mobile's mentioned and I'm a big fan of that. And Carl is in the expansion too. So also a big fan of that. A little jealous that I haven't been made into a game yet, but one day I'll get there. But Railroad Rivals is a very stripped down, quick game that really teaches you the fundamentals of railroad gaming in that style, but it doesn't overwhelm you with all the rules. I think Glenn did a really good job of what I call distilling this genre down into a great game. So Railroad Rivals on the lighter side. Now let's move over to Railroad Revolution. Now this is a railroad game in name, but not so much in what you're doing, because what you're doing is worker placement, and some of the most unique worker placement. I like worker placement that rewards you for using different types of workers. And in this game, based on the color of the meeple that you use, you get a different benefit when you go to the action space. I love this game. It's in my top 20. It might even be in my top 10. I'd have to go back and look at my list again. I want to do another one of those soon. But this game, to me, is a fantastic worker placement game. The expansion's great. There was a lot of complaining about, well, if you do this strategy in the original, then it runs away with the game. I disagree. We've played this 20, 30, 40 times probably, and we've never really had the runaway problems that people talked about. I get it. It can exist, but in our group, it just doesn't. Love this game. I love the unique idea of using workers in different ways. To me, it's just a fantastic game. Now, let's jump into the last one here. Now, this is a whole genre, the 18XX games. Now, if you're not familiar with this genre, you saw us kind of do the play through how to play, but essentially you're laying track and doing stocks. Now the stock to me is one of my favorite underused mechanics in gaming. The idea of indirect player control to me is absolutely one of my favorite types of gaming, where you can work as this character during this turn, but if somebody outbids you and becomes the president, well, they take that player board and you take that player board and you play as that, and you're essentially working the market. So it's more about the stock market in this game than it is the actual trains themselves. But I love manipulating the stock market and trying to, boost share prices so that you can sell and that you can dump a stock and all that stuff. I love games that deal with the stock market, and especially when it comes to trains. Now there's a couple others that do this. Right off comes to mind, a City of the Big Shoulder. Still haven't been able to play that yet. I really want to. But the idea of me of bidding on a stock market, becoming the president of the company, getting shares, paying dividends, choosing whether you pay those that revenue that comes in out as dividends to the shareholders, or whether you keep it in the company so that you can upgrade stuff in your company, to me is just a fun mechanic. Now, yes, these games can go pretty long. I think I have 18. Oh, what's the one behind me here? 18 something. It's literally right behind me somewhere here. Anyway, it's 18. Where is it? Should be like right here. Well, it's in here somewhere, but it's the China one, the Rails of China. I'm going to play that one soon. It's a long one. It's a full-blown 18XX game, and I want you to see it because I love this genre so much, even if I'm one of the few in my game group who does. They fight me when I say we have to play one of these, and they make fun of me the whole time because I do love it. So, if you love train games like me, let me know in the comments below what your favorites are, because we're just scratching the surface of the different types that you can play in this genre. I love these three games in particular, and I think you will too, depending on your playstyle. I've given you three different options with completely different variabilities of what to do. So let me know in the comments below what you think of these three games and any other games that you think should be in this list. Obviously, Russian Railways, German Railways, Ultimate Railroads, whatever it's called now, is just a wildly good game too, but we're going to be saving that for another time. So let me know in the comments, what are your favorite games in the train theme, and we'll come back later and we'll talk about it and we'll digest it and do all that sort of stuff. So I'm Brian Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dice Tower Brian. Until next time, we'll see ya.